Hello everyone and welcome back to Let's Play Megaman Rock and Roll. Let's start off the end game, shall we? Something I haven't mentioned thus far, just because there haven't been that many, is that you can actively skip any of the game's cutscenes by, I believe, holding the jump button, or was it the shoot button, or was it the start button? One of those three. Now, one thing I should know, we are locked into endgame stuff now from selecting that on the stage select. However, especially after you beat this stage, you can actively go to the options menu and abort the endgame stages to go back to the main 8 Robomaster stages. You'll have to restart the endgame, so say you're in endgame stage 3. You'll have to start all the way back here, even. But in the case you want to get some E-tanks or a W-tank, it's what you have to do. Now, in a bit of a reference to a mechanic that we saw somewhat back in the intro stage, this stage is sort of a stealth stage. If you touch any of the lasers or land next to any of the weird alert met tools, you will actively set off the alarm and everything will start attacking you. There are blast missile blocks you can use blow up all over the place to sneak through, but you don't want to do that due to the boss of this stage. Speaking of which, we'll get to that in a few moments. Because, like the intro stage, we have to play as both rock and roll for this stage. Megaman, I've always had trouble stealthing with here just because his lack of a second jump makes jumping hard, as they make the jumps for him quite a bit more precise. Now, something I'm not sure about, because I've always had roll selected when I enter this stage, is if the portion you do first depends on if you're playing as, or you have rock or roll selected. That sounds like a mechanic that could be a thing, but I'm not entirely sure. Also, there's something I actually only learned in this playthrough. If you take out the med tools before they get a chance to actually send out the alarm, the alarm won't sound, so use that to your advantage. I'll be frank, I don't know how you're supposed to make that jump. There is a slight puzzle element to this stage, just due to trying to avoid the lasers and the alarm, but it's ultimately so trivial. Well, not trivial. It doesn't mean much in the long run, so you can just gun through it, making sure you don't get hit in the meanwhile, and be fine all the same. It doesn't actively, like, impact anything beyond the stage's danger level. With that, now we're about to reach the boss fight proper, because now rock and roll are both in this room. This is the ICU-2. It is weak to blast missile. The point we have to hit is the pupil, the eye. The eye can circle around shooting arrow-shaped projectiles. It can summon smaller eyes to try and home in on you, but can also do this little spotlight attack where the moment the two spotlights overlap, that portion of the screen explodes. It also has a projectile that doesn't really act as a proper projectile. I think it can damage you, but I honestly forget, and what that does is remove the platform. The reason it removes a platform is if you step on the switch, you switch back to the opposite character. And the interesting thing about places where you have to play as both characters like this is that they have completely different weapon ammunition stocks. So, Roll can have an empty blast missile gauge, while Mega Man's is completely full. So if you play your cards right, you can just spam blast missiles throughout this fight without much of a fear of running out of ammo. welcome to the Wily stages, because of course there's Wily stages. And the castle here is laid out interestingly in that you have a choice to do a rock stage or a roll stage, sort of like a Wily 1 and 2 in any order. Same with Wily 3 and 4, so on and so forth. The only limitation is that you have to do Wily 1 and 2 before you do Wily 3 and 4. And the Wily stages in this game are a bit long, but they are very good culminations built around each character. Since they make it so that you can only do this stage as Roll, they designed it intentionally around Roll's abilities, sort of like the alternate pathways in Mega Man and Bass that are built for Mega Man and Bass respectively. And it just feels so good. Also, hi Snapper Joe. Now, something I should note as well, I forget exactly which Mega Man games did this and didn't, because frankly speaking, it's very inconsistent. Between each of the Wily stages and even the ICU2 stage back there, your weapon energy for your special weapons doesn't refill, so you need to make sure you either don't use your weapon tank in a smart place, get a strategic game over to restore it, or in the case you see some weapon ammo, grab it. Something I don't think I've even talked about at this point is that by default in this game, Mega Man and Roll both have the energy balancer to restore weapon energy to the lowest, to whichever one is lowest, and the exit button. As long as you've beaten the stage, you can exit a level. The gimmick for this stage, once you get past the first section, is a return to the Reactor Man mechanics, but we get this new little sprite enemy that if it actively touches any of the telebombs, they get electrified and will go right at you. Something I'm not sure about though, but it feels like it does do in regards to the energy balancer, is in the case you've used Rush or Roll at all, or Rush and Beat rather, I feel like it actively tries to refill that ammunition before any of your special weapons. So what I would recommend in the case you want to refill your weapons is just actively switch to whichever weapon you want to refill before doing that in the case you've used Beat or Rush thus far on the stage. I think the Rush and Beat ammunition might be the only thing that might refill between Wily stages though. Don't quote me on that because honestly, you seldom need to use it in these stages. The primary gimmick for this stage, though, is these light bulbs. Whenever you shoot them with the Mega Buster, I think it technically can be any of the special weapons as well, but why would you use the special weapons on the bulbs? It'll alternate these platforms between their on and off states. Now, you may have noticed during the cutscene, the friends that we rescued came in and said, yo, we're gonna help you out with this. They're active participants in this as well. In each of the 4 main Wily stages, one of the friendly Robomasters we've rescued is going to take us along a secondary pathway that is going to lead us to a machine we have to destroy. Usually these pathways are also easier or based off the mechanics of that individual friend's little Robotmaster stage section. Like here we have Daggerman's teleporting. And there's also usually going to be bonuses along the way, like maybe some extra life, some weapon energy, some extra health, so on and so forth. And doing all 4 of these is going to actively give you a bonus later on in the Wily Castle. Additionally, you may have seen earlier on, and right here, there are some little locked pathways. Destroying that machine will also unlock that level lock throughout the rest of the Wily stages. So for instance, there was a red lock earlier on. We destroyed that lock in Mega Man's level. But since we're doing Roll stage first, the blue lock in Mega Man's level will then be unlocked. Also, hello, reused Drake Man mechanic. Now, something I do find admittedly entertaining. There is one particular part of level design in this level that is very trollish with how they want you to kind of... They get you into a pattern and you think you have to continue the pattern, but you don't. It's actually, I believe, on this screen. The main mechanic here is that the instant kill reactor beam on the floor is constantly rising, so hurry up. But the last light right here is a troll. You're not supposed to shoot that at all. Dennis Engelhard, the developer of this game, has said he's only seen 2 people not fall for that on blind runs, and here I am falling for it on a repeated run. But here is the boss for the stage. This is Big Bulb. This thing has a couple of weaknesses. The beetle drone is one of them. The reactor, the charge laser is one and another. And then there's a third one, but I actively forget what that is. This boss is all about dodging his projectiles. Eventually he does light up the bottom of the screen, but when he does that, he also opens up his top projectile. If you can actively get yourself into the hole when it's open and avoiding his other attacks, you can enter the bulb of Big Bulb itself, and if you shoot out the charge laser while you're in there, well, You have to use every bit of ammo for it, but it's an instant kill on the boss. That is so cool! I seldom see alternate ways of taking out bosses like that in games alone, let alone Mega Man. I love that. That is so cool. Sure, it wastes an entire special weapons ammo bar, but it'll easily be refilled. With that, though, let's head on to Wily 2, quote-unquote. This is the Robot Factory. And this is a bit of a revisit to something that I liked a lot in Mega Man 4, I think it was. Also, I love this background. Though, this background actively caused some frame rate loss in recording. For some reason, with certain games, my main recording software, which is DX3, when I can use it at least, doesn't like to capture certain amounts of layers, and it'll actively drop the frame rate, not from like 60 to 20, because this game does run at 60 natively, I believe. It's more so from 60 to 52, and it's just like, really, you couldn't even go to the full 50. Also, this level design seems familiar. Now, something I didn't do because I just wasn't thinking about it. In the first screen of this particular stage, you can also pull a bit of a thing I've pulled in a couple of the 8 Robot Master stages, where if you use the shield bubble, you can just actively skip all that level design. Now, you might be noticing there's a lot of met tools in this stage so far. Get used to that. This is sort of supposed to be a met factory, sort of like that one stage, I believe it was in the Cossack Castle in Mega Man 4. Almost every enemy in this stage from here on is going to be one of the various varieties of met tools we've seen throughout the game, throughout the series. It's a nice little love letter to the enemy, honestly. And just to help differentiate which met tool is which type, each of the individual kinds has a different colored cross on its helmet. The green ones are the ones that I believe just do the usual. They peek up, go boom boom, and then they go down. And then there's these purple ones, which I believe are the spinning ones. I want to say those are from Mega Man 5. Don't quote me on that. But if you pay attention to the color of the cross, you should know that you should stand still and observe that enemy first so that you don't rush in and take a stupid shot. With that said, this stage does have some pretty dire platforming later on. It's also, I think, the only use of the charge laser as the generator power in the castle. Which is a bit odd, but I'm okay with reducing the amount of times you can use a special weapon as a secondary mechanic throughout the castle stages, since you're going to be saving it for the boss fights especially. But now it's time for Honey Woman to help us out. She carries you around in a way that I can't exactly describe from another Mega Man reference, which is the way I frame a lot of my discussion. She slowly carries you down. You can influence her right to left, but if you actively try to jump from her, you'll just start falling straight up. So you need to make sure if you're trying to jump that you time your jump right. I don't think she herself does not count as a hitbox, so in the case you want to touch a spike, you can get a little bit of leeway by just having her touch it instead of you. I'd still be a little careful though because, well, we know Mega Man's deathly allergy to spikes. Now, I do believe unlocking both locks in the first 2 stages gets a bonus to both characters in the 3rd and 4th stages, so it's just worth it to do. And there's the charge laser generator there, and it'll get you an E-tank, but if I recall correctly, I am already full on those, so no thank you. Now, we are coming up on the section of the Wily Castle that I died on easily the most on my first playthrough, barring one other instance later on. In the next screen onwards, there are going to be crushers, similarly to one of the stages, I forget which. However, these crushers are surprisingly strict with their timing. You need to actively slide to get around them sometimes, I feel. Some advice I've seen from one of the playtesters on another LP's comment section is to, especially on this screen, the moment you start up the ladder, just keep moving. Don't actively pause at any point, and you should get through that first set just fine. But especially the first crusher in this room is notoriously hard to dodge. With that, though, we're on to the boss of the stage, which is weak to the soul trap, so get that out. With that said, this is one of the most annoying bosses in the game. This is the Met Grabber. This thing is completely pattern-based. It pulls out some Mets on one side, they jump out, it'll dump them on the other side, it'll then drop a box onto the opposite side, pick up the box it's not over, or no, it moves over to the other side. It does the same thing over and over again. You can actively bait it into soul trapped Mets by that, or the ones that jump out at you, you can then jump into to try and aim at the Met grabber itself. But sometimes the hitboxes don't like to behave, sometimes it's a bit too precise. And this goes into an issue with Soul Grabber had earlier on. In the current update, you just have to jump into the Soul Grabber to have it move upwards. But in the original release, you had to actively hold the direction that you wanted it to go in, so up or down. And that caused some problems, so that was updated. With that said, this boss is simple, but it hurts a lot, and for some reason, just the idea of having to keep in mind the soul traps really messes with my head, so I actively have to just take some stupid hits. Ah well. It's a fun boss, and it's one of the most smartly designed bosses in the game, honestly. It's just my brain, no work, no thoughts, brain empty. But that's that stage. It's probably the hardest stage out of the main ones that we're going to do in the Wily Castle, just in terms of some of the tight platforming and instant death circumstances. But ultimately, if you've gotten this far, you can get through that with enough War of Attrition efforts, really. But with that, I'm going to end this off here. Thank you guys for watching, and in part 5, we're going to continue on in the Wily Castle. See you guys then.